Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Well, let's spend some time with Charlotte Libov. She's the author of the book, Da Vinci's Cancer Survival Guide, and really has been a pioneer in health advocacy. I'm delighted to have her on the program. Charlotte, let's just begin with, first of all, welcome to the show. Kind of tell us your story. Give a little bit of background about yourself.
Well, I was a newspaper reporter, and I worked for papers including contributing to the New York Times. In 1990, I found out I had to undergo open heart surgery for a heart defect I'd been born with. I was an adult. It came as a tremendous surprise to me, and that kind of led me on the road to writing health books and being an advocate and basically trying to translate what is in medical studies and what's going on to people so we can all use all the things that scientists are finding out.
Very good. Talk about this most recent book that you've written.
Very excited about it. It's called The Cancer Survival Guide. And I'm really kind of excited about it for two reasons. One, of course, is the potential to help people, because for the past 20 years, I've visited hospitals, labs, I've sat in front of my computer, and I've seen our war on cancer evolving into this new cancer moonshot and all the discoveries, and it's really an honor for me to be able to put it all together in usable information. I cover 13 different types of cancer, including the 4 main ones that make up something like 60%, which is breast cancer, prostate, lung, and colon, and then a lot of others. And the reason I'm so excited to be doing it now is because finally we have some really good things to talk about, which I don't think we've had in a long time.
Okay. And what are those things?
Well, I was looking at the internet a couple of days ago, and there was a picture of Jimmy Carter, and he's lecturing in London. He's 91 years old. He was diagnosed with melanoma that had spread to his brain in August. And if anybody watched that press conference, you saw an upbeat Jimmy Carter, but a Jimmy Carter that said, I've had a good life, and I'm ready to go. And they started him on a new drug, immunology drug, at Emory. And the man is in London right now lecturing. And he's 91 years old.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's an amazing story.
Astounding.
Talk a little bit, and the thing about it is that what's interesting is I'm really glad that we're having stories like this, because it seems like the increase in cancer, which may be arranged from, longevity, being in your 90s, at some point, that body's going to begin to break down in different ways, because my understanding about cancer is it's almost theoretically a morph that can't really happen, unless unless there's something wrong with the body fundamentally. And yet, it's becoming so common. Everyone knows someone who has had cancer. Most of us know multiple someones who, suffers from it. And so thank God we're having this extraordinary progress. 30 or 40 years ago was a much different story.
Absolutely. 40 years ago, actually, that's around the time, I always date it back to when Richard Nixon signed the War on Cancer Act. And everybody sometimes says, well, that was a failure because we didn't find a cure. Finding a cure, we learned, was really, really tough because of two reasons. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head when you talked about longevity and the body breaking down. One thing that happens when we get older is that our immune system isn't as good as it used to be. And our immune system can't take out cells that turn cancerous. But,
and another challenge, I guess, with the whole cancer problem is that there's so many different types. The term cancer is just really an innocuous, vague term that describes enormous growth of unhealthy cells or tumors. And it's very difficult. They're not dealing with a disease. They're dealing with a plethora of disease with a common characteristic, aren't they?
Absolutely. they're dealing actually with an umbrella term, and again, you hit the nail right on the head. It's an umbrella term of more than 100 different diseases. And the other problem is that it's a disease that's rooted right in our own quest to survive. It's rooted in the whole reason that keeps us alive. Our cells divide. Now, our cells are also supposed to divide, and then at some point they're supposed to die. And what happens with cancer cells, basically, is that they become immortal. But this is really rooted in our DNA. And when I looked at the initiative for the new cancer moonshot that the administration launched, I see terms that we never even dreamt of when Nixon signed the war on cancer: genetics, cancer vaccines, immunology. We know so much more, and we are making progress. You know, it's not a failure. It's just a really, really, really tough problem.
Yeah, and yet we're making like extraordinary strides. I honestly think we're on a threshold of within 5 to 10 years of rather rapidly eliminating some of these types of cancer without, essentially poisoning the disease to death and also poisoning the person who's suffering from it. I think we're going to be entering a new era. We're targeted. I mean, all the stories I see are very positive.
I agree with you. And, when I was writing this book a year ago, doctors would tell me, they would say, we are on the threshold. And now the threshold is here. The reason that Jimmy Carter got treated as old is because of these new class of drugs that are personalized and targeted and much gentler than chemotherapy and radiation that really was all we had for half a century. Nobody with a ounce of kindness would have ever treated Jimmy Carter for brain cancer a year ago, because no one would put the man through that. But right now, because his type of cancer matches and his genetics match a treatment that is much more gentle and, as we can see, effective, that's why he's having the results. That's why other people will have the results. The immunology drugs that he is on were only approved in a fast-track approval process in December of 2014. And now they're making headlines in terms of not only melanoma that's spread to the brain, and also lung cancer, which is one of the most dreaded. Lung cancer is the biggest cancer killer of men and women. Mm-hmm. And now there's something for lung cancer that's spread that we didn't have a year ago.
Yeah. Let me ask you, this is the last question. We're running out of time. Who do you have in mind with writing this book? And because, honestly, it looks like it's not just for the person battling it, but for the loved ones who are battling it with them. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, thank you. I was, in my mind, I started writing the book for someone that had been newly diagnosed when I started writing the Cancer Survival Guide. It was for someone that had been newly diagnosed with one of these 13 forms of cancer. But then it basically evolved, and I have a lot of resources for loved ones, for people who are caregivers, and also one of the real frontiers. And again, it just shows how far we've come. One of the biggest topics in cancer right now is cancer survivors, because there's something like 1.5 million people that have had cancer, that are faced with a lot of different issues because they're cancer survivors, and they're left with different issues because of the drugs that saved their lives, basically, or their finances, or their emotions. I have a lot in the book about the psychological price of cancer. So it's really for someone that is newly diagnosed, definitely, to get kind of a leg up on getting the right treatment. For someone who is living with or has basically survived, and for their loved ones as well.
And how do we get a copy of it?
Oh, such a wonderful question. Thank you.
Yeah.
You can basically Google Cancer Survival Guide. you'll find out that it's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble, so you can get an actual hold it in your hands copy, or that you can mark up, all the important paragraphs, or you can get it for your Kindle or your Nook. And if you probably Google, you don't even remember my last name, Charlotte Cancer Survival Guide, I'm sure you'll find a link to do it.
Charlotte Libov, thanks so much for being with us. Do want to remind the listener, best type in here, shows up over there, including this interview, at the National News website, usdailyreview.com. Stay tuned for more after this.